As a unit coordinator, the biggest number of complaints I've had from students have always been about a mismatch between, particularly in marking, or the running of, say, tutorials, where the sessional staff are just variable. Students talk to each other, they find out that one tutor is particularly engaged or particularly helpful in their feedback, or there's a perception that one tutor is hard and another one's easy, or whatever it might be. That's where the greatest conflict comes in. I've got a bit of a rule about teaching. My little rule is that if you have 70 or less students, don't have sessional staff. It's actually more efficient and more effective for you to take on 100% of the teaching load in terms of the marking and everything, rather than have tutors, because sessional staff and tutors will slow you down. You have to appoint them, you have to brief them, you have to do some kind of marking calibration exercise with them, and you sort of have to follow up on them to some extent, and that can be a lot of hard work, particularly if you're passionate about that your teaching should be as good as possible and as smooth as possible. So my rule is 70 or less, do it yourself, but at about 60 or 70 assignments, life becomes pretty daunting for marking, and that's when your sanity starts to fray, in my experience. And you do need to have sessional staff. Of course, if you have choice in who the sessional staff are, that's great, because you can pick people that perhaps they're already postdocs you're working with, or PhD students, and you already have a good relationship with them. Sometimes, of course, you take on a unit where the sessional staff have been teaching in that unit for years. They feel that they know the unit and you want to change something, and there's a lot of resistance. You have to work with the sessional staff, and you need to empower them to a large extent to run with their ideas. You want to harness their passion, but you've got to make sure that ultimately they stay within the learning objectives that you have in mind for each tutorial and the overall unit learning objectives. That is a challenge. It's just the challenge of managing staff.